Cuyahoga County Finance and Budgeting Committee meeting for Monday, June 22nd, 2015 to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Calling the roll, Mr. Greenspan.
Here.
Mr. Miller. Here. Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones is absent. Mr. Hairston. Mr. Hairston is absent. Mr. Gallagher. Here. Mr. Schron.
Here.
Ms. Brown.
Here.
We have a quorum, and I'd like the record to reflect that Mr. Brady is in attendance.
Great, thank you. I'd also like a motion. I'll make a motion to excuse Mr. Hairston and Mr. Jones.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Both all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Mr. Hairston and Jones are so excused. Is there any public comment related to the agenda?
No, Mr. Chair. No one has signed in.
Before us are the meeting minutes from June 15th. If there are no exceptions to the minutes, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Those meeting minutes are approved. We have no matters referred to committee at this time. We have 3 items for discussion. The first item are first quarter financial results. Those results are not yet available for us to review, and as such, we will defer that item to a future meeting upon presentation. The next item on the agenda is an item from the Personnel Review Commission. They have a request for additional funding. If the Personnel Review Commission please come forward.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Rebecca Kopczynski. I'm the administrator of the PRC. This is more of actually an FYI at this point. You may recall that in 2014 we submitted a request for funding that was for 5 additional FTEs that we felt we needed to take on the additional work of the class and comp administration and the civil service testing that we were ramping up to do at that point. We did receive funding for 3 of those 5 positions, and we filled those. We were advised at the time by council to come back in 6 months or so whenever we had additional reason to request additional funding. So we did that. We presented that request a couple of weeks ago. We have worked with the fiscal department to run out some of our projections, primarily in the realm of our salaries and benefits, because we had a couple of later hires that we had anticipated hiring sooner. We do have a surplus there, and we are projecting a surplus in our contracts because of the fewer number of appeals that we've received this year. So our understanding from fiscal is that we have enough surplus this year to handle acquiring these 2 additional FTEs. But we also wanted to make sure that you were fully aware of what we were doing so that when we submit our request later this year for our funding for next year, we anticipate including those FTEs in our request at that time. I have George Vaughn here with me in case you have any questions about why these additional people are needed. I can give you the basics, and that is because we have 3 professionals right now who are working to respond to the requests for testing. You may have been aware we have heard concerns from a number of different departments across the county that are worried about how long this process is taking with the PRC. We did sort of anticipate that, and we have now had enough experience doing this work that we feel we can justify these additional requests for funding for these FTEs in the fall when we come back in front of you. And happy to answer any questions you might have about the need or anything else at that point.
I have a few. Any questions? These 2 new hires
Yes.
that you have been able to identify as existing funds from your current budget. So we're not looking at any increasing your budget. You will just
That's
ask for a
correct.
transfer on a future biweekly fiscal agenda.
That's correct.
And when do you anticipate them being hired?
We are hoping to have them on board by August 1st. We have existing lists, but we have fewer than 10 names on there, so we can do an additional test, and we'd like to do that to capture some of the recent graduates in the market that we know are out there. So we're going to do that. In fact, that position is already posted, so we anticipate August 1st.
August 1st.
It's a priority.
And you're right, there have been some, and you know, there's some concerns about the testing taking longer, at least the test being prepared and
Right.
so forth. With these 2 hired, when do you anticipate a catch up on the backlog of work that is residing in your
I'll
department?
probably defer to George at this point. Do you have a good sense of when that might be?
You'll have to come up to the microphone just so we can get you on the record and put you on the spot.
Introduce yourself too.
George Vaughn from the Personnel Review Commission. With what is currently posted,
with the 2 additional people, I would say it would probably take 3 to 4 months to clear everything, but that'll take some time for the new hires to get up to speed. Plus, the postings aren't going to stop at that point. We would become more efficient at finishing those, but as far as the backlog, I think it would take several months to actually catch up with that.
And is this to get the tests written, not to administer the tests?
It would be to write them, validate them, administer them, and then actually get the eligibility list produced. That would be the results of these tests.
If I could add to that, one of the things that we're finding is that we're needing to enhance the documentation that is used to justify what the county has been doing. So it's really just a matter of conducting more thorough job analysis in many places and creating a document that reflects that to support the test that's being developed.
Okay, so some of the criticism that your department, your agency has been hearing, it has to do with the preparation of these tests.
Exactly.
And so you're saying with these 2 hires, on not only on a temporary basis, because there's no appropriation for 16, 17,
right,
but the expectation is if they are included in the budget and it's so adopted, that you will be caught up, be ready to handle the hiring demands that come down from the administration.
I think we'll be able to do that in a much more efficient manner than we have been up until now.
And that's just with these 2 new hires.
I do. Well, and in addition, we are using interns, and I think I mentioned this to you a couple of months ago. We're using interns who are currently working on their master's in industrial psychology at local universities, so they're supplementing the work staff too, or the staff too, so making a big difference, helping us get the backlog addressed.
So, and I'll look ahead to next year's budget, but these 2 new hires are currently not in your budget. Do you anticipate any additional hires next year?
I do not.
Okay. Any questions? Mr. Miller, then Ms. Brown.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Kopczynski, do you expect that there will come a point sometime next year where you get caught up on the backlog and the requests to start to slow down and you don't need as many people as you're currently requesting, or do you think that this will be an ongoing activity where requests will keep coming in on a regular basis so that there will be plenty of work for these new people to do?
We do expect that the requests are going to continue. We know that, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, George, but I believe the county processed about 30,000 or 35,000 applicants last year. So I don't anticipate that the hiring needs of the county are going to change for any reason whatsoever. But I do believe that going forward, once we've done this initial groundwork for a position, it won't have to be redone again. It might have to be reviewed. The challenge is that there are 450 classifications, and so we're dealing with them as they're presented to us. We also know that another body of work that's being done at the agency is cleaning up that classification plan. So we're trying to get these teams to move forward together and whenever we can. But I don't anticipate that there is not going to be a need going forward for this level of staffing. I think it's going to be adequate to meet what we need going forward.
Okay, Ms. Brown.
Mr. Chair, thank you. My question is, if I understood you correctly, the surplus is available because there was a reduced number of appeals. Is that correct?
There have been a reduction in the number of appeals that were filed this year, so it's not. It has been fairly drastic. With the number of appeals that we have been dealing with in the past were driven largely by the reorganization of the county and the new government, and we're not. That docket has been resolved largely. So we're anticipating about 25 appeals in 2015 based on what we've seen so far this year. So that's
versus historically.
Compared to historically, I think last year we had, I want to say 48. The year before that were 140. So it is dropping off significantly, which is good news.
And I think the other question was asked and answered. With the hire of the new employees, do you anticipate in the new budget an increase?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. If you have anything else you'd like to add. Right now, there's no formal request before council. This was merely an information opportunity. However, we should be mindful and should look for a transfer request come through the biweekly fiscal agenda. Do you have any idea when you might be requesting that?
I don't at this point. I'm sorry, I don't.
Okay.
But,
Okay, great. All right,
okay.
well, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Sure, thank you. The last item on the agenda is a preview of the 2016-2017 biennial budget protocol. In our package, you'll see a letter that's dated June 3rd. It's from myself. This document has been shared with the administration. This gives us provides some guidance as to how we're going to start reviewing the budget, which we'll start reviewing in October. It's a little different than we've done it in the past. The outlook is, and the perspective that we're going to use is different. And what we're going to focus on as we review the administration, the executive's recommended budget, is an outcome-based budgeting protocol. Now, to be clear, it's not a true outcome-based budgeting protocol, because in order to do that, the administration or an administration would need to adopt an outcome-based management style, management approach, which we cannot compel them to do, nor am I asking them to do. However, I do believe that we do have an opportunity to change the way in which we review the administration's recommended budget. And I say that in the sense that we all know that part of the administration's budget are departments and agencies underneath the administration itself, but also other agencies and other departments, such as the courts and the Board of Elections, and those external agencies that we have a responsibility to provide funding for. They too will be held accountable to this standard. And I'm not going to read you through the entire document. It's not very long, but I can review with you at a top level what is currently being presented and what is new and how we're going to review it. If we'll look on the second page where it starts with the process, if you look at the budget book right now as it's presented, every agency must have a mission statement. So that's not changing. We just want to make sure that there is a mission statement. There'll be 3 questions that will be fundamentally addressed in the presentation. Number 1 will be as we identify goals and objectives, what is it that agency does? How will you do it, and how will you gauge your success? And if you can read into how will you gauge success component of this, we're going to hold folks accountable, and we're going to evaluate programs for funding, whether it be continuing funding, enhanced funding, reduction of fundings, or even elimination of programs and or service offerings. The next major section will have to do with accountability, key performance measures. In the budget books now, if you notice, there are sections where the departments have to submit how they anticipate or what they anticipate to do over the next few years. So as an example, somebody may say, we're going to serve 200 individuals if that's their objective. In the past, nobody's ever gone back, at least publicly in this book, and said, okay, well, you said in the last budget cycle you were going to service 200 people in each of the 2 years. How did you actually do? Did you serve 200 people? Did you serve 400? Did you serve 50? Well, we're now going to ask that you tell us through a measurable performance metrics how you did, and did you perform or not. If you missed your target by 5% or 10%, we'll still discuss what that metrics will be. Then you're going to have to explain to us why you missed your target. Either you overperformed or you underperformed. We want to know why, because that's going to aid us in the evaluation if we're going to continue to move forward with funding at the current level that you're expecting. And then also each agency will be required to provide at least 3 key performance measures that will be measured over the next 3 years. So we're looking backwards to see how folks performed. We're going to look forward to determine what we can expect in the future. And then in the mid-year budget cycle next year, we're going to hold them accountable to their 2015 actual performance and a preview into 16. One of the other things that we're going to do, which we already adopted by code in section 701.04, if we remember, the request for funds for new programs must meet certain criteria. We're going to hold those folks accountable if you're requesting a new program or new funding, or in the PRC's situation, you're requesting new people. We want to know what they're going to do, how they're going to perform, what their milestones are. And the last item obviously has to do if you've reduced or discontinued programs, we want to understand why you did that. Attached is a draft of a calendar for how we can anticipate the budget cycle rolling forward. By our charter, the executive is to submit a budget to us no later than the first meeting of October, which is October 13th. Prior to that meeting, the council meeting at the presentation from 3 to 5, there's the anticipation that we would have a committee of the whole, and the fiscal officer will then provide us a review of the budget summary and the schedule. So effectively sections 1 and 2, if we were to use the existing budget as a guide. It'll be held for first reading that night and sent to committee of the whole. What's different in this budget cycle versus previous budget cycles is we will be reviewing the budget in modules. So right now, if this schedule was to hold true, and we're still working out the final details, on the 22nd, we would hear the entire Health and Human Service module. Every department, every agency that falls under the Health and Human Service section of the budget will be heard on that day. Once again, assuming the schedule stands and it's subject to change, on the 23rd, we will hear all the justice services and public safety components of the budget, as well as start to lead into public works, which will then be the next module, which will be heard on the 29th. And then we'll also lead into general government, which includes the county council, IT, the fiscal department, human resources. The next module then we'll continue general government, as well as the capital debt. We've left 2 days open, 2 3-hours, or 1 3-hour session and 1 2-hour session for follow-on budget discussions if needed. So November 5th and November 10th, as are in here, are as needed TBD sections, and then we'll read out for our second reading on the 24th of November and anticipate final adoption on December 8th. So that's an overview of the budget protocol. The reason it's important that we get this out now, we are about 90 days from the budget being presented to us. So I want to make sure that not only the administration, which we've already had conversations with, but also those agencies that support, that require support from the county, understand the protocol that's going to be expected of them. So we're all on the same page when we review the budget, that the information requested is supplied. So I'll entertain any questions. First I want to thank our staff who's done a significant amount of work on helping me compile information. I know it looks very condensed, but this took a lot of effort in order to review a new budget style for the county, and I believe it will yield the results of us being responsive to the needs of our residents by not only understanding the programmatic requests, but the performance of our county as it relates to delivering those services effectively. Any questions from my colleagues? Mr. Miller.
I have a couple of comments. One is regarding the performance measurement. I strongly support the use of performance measurement in budgeting, but I think it's also important to recognize its limitations. This kind of analysis tends to focus on numbers of services provided. But if you're not careful, there's very little effort to determine what's the quality level at which the services were provided, and secondly, regardless of the quality level, was the providing of those services effective in obtaining the kind of results or positive changes that we were hoping to obtain. So I think we need to be careful that we don't get overly focused simply on numbers of services provided and not see the broader picture. Okay. The second comment I have is that I think the part about reduced or discontinued services is a very important element, particularly for this budget where we have a new administration and we expect that some things are going to be proposed to be expanded and some things are going to be proposed to be reduced, and I think for us to be told what the proposed reductions or eliminations are directly without having to sift through and hunt them out, I think is a very important element and will help us in making decisions. The final thing that I would say is that I like the schedule a lot, but would just note that if I put out a schedule with that many all-day sessions and with Thursdays and Fridays, I would have been strung up from a high tree somewhere. So I don't know how you pulled this off, but I do like the schedule.
All right. Thank you, I think. Hey, just to comment on your first point regarding being so numbers driven, that's why the analysis of if your program has missed its mark by a percentage, whether it's 5% or 10%, that a narrative is provided so we can understand some of the softer issues that might have either prohibited a program or service from being delivered, or what was, or the other way. What was it that really was a catalyst, whether it be additional federal funding or other state programs that assisted in the achievement of those goals. As far as the schedule is concerned, I didn't count the number of hours when we put this together, but I think there may be a change of 1 or 2 days on here. But we will make this. The other thing that's important is when Mr. Miller chaired these budget hearings and we were learning about the new government, those committee meetings were very much needed so we can understand what's going on and how we operated as a new government. And as we're maturing, a lot of those questions and answers have been proven out through actual practice. So we will try to be as respectful of the committee members' time as well as those who will be presenting to make sure that our protocol is concise and to the point. And that's why I want to get this out early. My expectation is that, and I don't expect those who will be presenting to basically reiterate what they presented to us in writing. Basically, I'm also expecting my colleagues to review the information prior to the committee meeting so that we all come educated and informed on what's being presented before us, and it'd be more of a Q&A session than a presentation and then a Q&A session. So that'll depend upon us and also the presenters. I'd like them to be as brief and concise and have the information presented in the budget book to stand on its own. So any other comments? No? Hearing none. Moving on the agenda, is there any miscellaneous business? Any other public comment?
No, Mr. Chair, no one has signed in.
Okay, then we will stand adjourned. Thank you.